Hello, everyone. At long last, it's the Mediate podcast back with our 80s edition of Music Mates. This is a bonus episode today, as demanded by our loyal fans. You know, I saw them in the comments saying, no, stop, there's this gothy post-punk band from Salford that we all forgot to do somehow. You may not have heard of them, but they're actually pretty great. Sure enough, I checked them out and I did like what I heard, and I thought they were so good that I decided to listen to our fans in the comments and make sure that we don't forget to review them together. But before that, and before my honourable mentions, I wanted to ask you guys how you found doing this series. What have you thought of the albums that we've done? Have you enjoyed them? Have you been glad that we all did this together? Because I sure have.
It has been lots of fun, especially considering the long arc of Music Mates history, starting back with the start of the 90s. You know, now a good chunk of musical history that I can claim to have somewhat of an understanding of. I used to be like, all I listen to is like video game OSTs and anime openings, and now I'm like, I also listen to real music now, and occasionally. So it has been fun.
It must be nice for you as well, Andrew, coming in halfway through, catching up with all those albums we did for that one episode. It was
Indeed,
quite fun.
it has been a very great pleasure to be a special guest on this series, and it was a good excuse to listen to a bunch of albums I might not have listened to otherwise, I'm very glad to have been part of it, and
it's been good to experience these albums, even if they're most of the time not ones I'm
likely to listen to again.
Like 95% of the albums we've done, I think you probably won't go back to anytime soon.
Let's see. Haven't gone back. No, none of them. But
well, they're all so good. Once was enough, right?
You cut that bit out.
That was a pretty damning indictment.
I still have enjoyed it. Found some good songs that I do like, and have got a better understanding for a bunch of artists and albums that were just sort of vaguely known to me, but not really known to me, if that makes sense. So it's been good to expand my horizons, even if I ultimately refuse to have my horizons expanded.
I mean, looking at this list, we've done some really fantastic albums here. You know, Remain in Light, Thriller, Purple Rain, Hounds of Love, Joshua Tree. You know, these are some of the greatest albums of all time. You know, and it's been fantastic to kind of get the opportunity. Yeah, they truly are. But getting the opportunity to kind of talk about some of these artists, you know, whose work I was aware of, but who I'd never really taken the time to listen to. You know, Talking Heads, who now I'd say, you know, definitely one of my favourite bands. You know, Kate Bush, who, you know, love her or hate her. You know, she's a real kind of singular artist of this era, and it's been a great journey, and we're finally ending it on Joy Division, who are again a band. You know, I've seen the memes, I've seen Ethan's t-shirts, but you know, apart from Love Will Tear Us Apart, you know, famously in Metal Gear Solid 5, I didn't know much about this band, so I feel like we've come full circle on for me anyway, a kind of learning journey of 80s music.
Good. I'm glad you feel that way. I'm glad you all feel that way. Before we go on to the album, I just want to give a few honourable mentions. With this being a special episode about a particular year in question, not being about a particular year in question, I've decided to give out a shout out to some other great artists from the 80s that we've kind of neglected, I guess, a little bit, or I've neglected in not choosing their albums for the series. The first one that I want to talk about is Madonna. She is an artist that has numerous classic 80s albums under her belt, like her debut, like a Virgin, Blue, and then in the 90s she had a pretty big Renaissance album called Ray of Light, which I actually listened to for the first time recently, and I did really quite like. She's a real feminist icon in music, really one of the 80s artists that dominated the pop landscape at the time with a lot of just really catchy tunes. She found a way to be like quite sexy but empowering at the same time, as she was a massive trendsetter in fashion too for the era as well. And that's only really the tip of the iceberg. Another band that I want to mention is Queen. Though a lot of their biggest songs came out in the 70s, like Bohemian Rhapsody, We Will Rock You, you know, tracks like that, they still did have a lot of massive 80s hits with Another One Bites the Dust, Under Pressure, just to name a few examples. The main reason I wanted to bring up Queen is because of Live Aid 1985, which is quite possibly the most famous concert that has ever happened in music history. You had multiple really prominent names in rock that performed as part of this concert. David Bowie was there, Elton John, U2, but everybody remembers Queen. I mean, they're like practically synonymous with that event, and their performance at that concert was a really historic event in music. I mean, you had really like phenomenal viewing figures for the 80s, and then you also have the success that it got in its charitable aims as well was you know, fantastic to see and read about. And when people think of Freddie Mercury, they very much think of that performance from that concert. And then the last band that I want to mention quickly is Metallica. Even though their best-selling album came out in the 90s, a lot of hardcore fans, at least the ones that I've, you know, spoken to, you know, at school, uni, at work, wherever it may be, a lot of them say that their preferred body of work was the material that came out, like, in the 80s. I mean, you had albums like Master of Puppets, Ride the Lightning. They were real trailblazers in the thrash metal scene. And metal isn't a genre that I've historically liked that much, but I've tried to make an effort, at least more of an effort in these last few years, and I think Metallica, for me anyway, has been a pretty good entry point into that genre. So, you know, if you're looking to give that genre a go, I would definitely recommend starting off with Metallica. They're a pretty good place to start. Now, onto the album in question. So, of course, last episode we did 1989 with The Cure and the Pixies. Today we'll be heading back, like way back, 9 years before those two albums, where the year is 1980. Talking Heads have just released one of the masterpieces of their career. And a band from the north of England called Joy Division have just released their sophomore record. But, oh, actually, sorry, before I forget, I meant to say this in the intro. As well as this being a bonus episode, it's a really special episode because, you know, we're doing something right now that we don't really get to do often, if at all. I really want you guys to give a warm welcome to the man who discovered Joy Division and put them on the map, Tony Wilson, who is with us today. I'm really, really happy to have you here, Tony, despite the fact that you died in 2007.
You know what they say,
how'd you feel?
Legends never die. Yeah, I mean, I feel good. I feel a lot younger than I was, and also I wasn't born in Manchester, and a music producer. I haven't kept that career up. Kept the name though. That's pretty much it.
Great name. So just a little quick,
just for all of the fans that don't know, my full legal name of Tony Wilson. There you go.
Yeah,
that's the joke.
I couldn't miss an opportunity to at least slightly dox you, Tony. I mean, the joke was there. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's justified. It's justified. I've been living in that man's shadow ever since I was born.
Joy Division were an early post-punk band originating in 1976 that were only around for a few years, which, given their legacy and status in the industry, is pretty remarkable, actually. I feel like a kind of a broken record on this point because, you know, we do all these albums that we've, you know, recorded on in the last couple of years, and, you know, it's so easy to just say, like, they're so influential, they're so important, you know, blah, 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 blah. And today I'm going to try and kind of refrain from doing that a little bit and just focus on really what I enjoy about the music and why they tick for me so much. They're a band that only have 2 studio albums. I would imagine that they'd have probably gone on to make more records together, but unfortunately, the price of music that is so perpetually dark and hopeless must, to a point, come with a frontman and main songwriter who experiences those very emotions. And in this case, that person is Ian Curtis, who very tragically took his own life in May of 1980. And Joy Division's second and final album, Closer, was released posthumously a couple of months later. And this is the album that we're reviewing today. So, let's get into it. The first thing I wanted to ask you guys about is this is clearly quite a discordant album to listen to. I think out of so many of the albums that we've done on the 80s series, I think Closer is comfortably at least one of the most kind of dissonant albums that we've done, and I think that it's got a bit of a challenging nature. It's a bit challenging to get into because of that. And I just wanted to ask you guys, was that something that affected your ability to enjoy it? I think I know what the answer's going to be, judging from the sounds of what you guys were saying earlier. But do you guys want to just tell me your initial thoughts about the album?
I agree that this album was challenging. It's the first album I've ever had to look up a walkthrough to finish. What about everyone else?
I think I don't know if it necessarily felt challenging in that sort of way. I guess because I was familiar with some of the sound of Joy Division, so I don't know. It was, I guess the rough sound was like, well, yeah, that is kind of Joy Division. But I think what struggled for me is it never quite had anything that grabbed me as much as anything from their previous album, which I know a lot better.
Yeah, I have. I don't know. I have complicated feelings about this album. I have listened to it, I think, 5 times now. Partly because of scheduling things with this podcast, where I thought it was going to happen, so I listened to the album in advance, and then it didn't happen, and then weeks passed, and so I was like, oh, hang on, now we're going to do it, and I listened to the album again, and that's not a complaint.
It keeps on getting closer and closer.
Yes. Very nice. But yeah, so I've listened to this album. Of all the albums we've done in this 80s series, this is the one I have listened to the most. And I thought initially that I might start to like it more the more I listened to it, and I didn't. And I realised, re-listening to it this afternoon, that the main issue for me is it is the singing. The music is fine. The lyrics, I made the decision to read the lyrics today, so I could see what the songs were actually talking about, and lyrics are perfectly fine. I just really do not like the vocal performance, to the point where I went back to listen to Unknown Pleasures, their other album, to make sure that I wasn't wrong in thinking that I liked Joy Division, because I thought I liked Joy Division, and it turns out I do like Joy Division. I don't like this album, and I don't like it because I don't like the vocals, which.
So hang on. You prefer the singing on the other album as opposed to this one?
Yes. Yeah.
Why is that?
It's just, I think it is the, I don't know, there's something about this, about the performance of these vocals. They feel discordant, but not too, I don't know, I can tolerate discordance in a song, but it just feels like the vocal performance doesn't fit with the rest of what's going on, and it not fitting doesn't feel like it adds anything. All of the performances sound like they're being done by someone who is down the corridor in an echoey room, which makes it difficult to pick out what's being said, and I'm a person who likes lyrics and being able
so that's the thing, Andrew. Actually, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head towards the end there. I don't think it's so much the performance as it is the way that the vocals are mixed into the tracks.
Well, it's not just how it's mixed into the track. That is another aspect of it that I find that I don't like. I do think if it wasn't, without the echo and with it more prominent in the song, I think I would still find it, I don't know, just a little bit too atonal, a little bit too offbeat. It just doesn't...
Well, I think his vocals have a lot more reverb on Unknown Pleasures, which is one of the... It's interesting you mention this because I like Closer more than Unknown Pleasures, which I understand is like a massive hipster opinion to have, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But the one thing that I think Unknown Pleasures personally has over Closer is the vocals. I think his performances are better on that album. I think the way they're mixed on that album is a little bit better. There are certain tracks that come to mind, like Day of the Lords, for instance. On Unknown Pleasures has one of my favourite vocal performances of his, because it's just so like striking, and like the way that he kind of sings on that song, he's almost like bellowing. He projects really, really well. I think that's the one thing that I'd say about Unknown Pleasures. Across all the songs, he projects so well, and his voice just kind of like fills all the space inside the song. Whereas on Closer, I think it is weaker. I think it is, as you said, a little bit more muffled. I do have some issues with the mixing in certain tracks. I think in other songs on the album it is better, but predominantly Unknown Pleasures does have that.
There are songs where it bothered the singing bothered me less, but my end feeling at the end, having finished the album, was that if the entire thing had been an instrumental, I probably would have liked it considerably more, which I don't know. I feel bad saying, because
I do agree with Jono, and sorry, not Jono. I read your name off the Discord. I do agree with Andrew on this complaint of the vocals. Like, one of the early game tips I got from Ethan for beating this album is that there's a difficulty spike right at the beginning. And I definitely...
Yes, I'm glad you remembered that message from like 5 months ago.
I definitely agree. I think the thing that strikes me about these vocals is that I think the appeal of the album is meant to be this kind of like discordant, like almost like uneasy, moody atmosphere. So he's trying to go for this like mellow, kind of like disinterested sort of tone to his voice, but it just sounds like he doesn't want to be there, and it's like, oh my god. Like,
did you think about maybe the fact that he doesn't want to be there in life, Tony? Maybe that's
He'd already died by this point.
Yeah, he kind of got his wish, mate.
The death's not all it's cracked up to be, trust me. Yeah, and especially some of like the delivery, like as like this the first song where it's like, this is the way, I'm stuck inside, whatever the line is.
Step
inside, he says.
I'm stuck inside this
yeah.
album. Oh, it's my purgatory. It's like such like a spoken word kind of delivery where it's kind of a bit rushed, like the way he delivers it, and it just sounds like you go to like karaoke and there's like someone's dad singing, and you're like, okay, that's just like a regular. There's not like, I know obviously this is a very different style of vocals, but there's not like a clean sort of sound. There's not like any like sort of, it doesn't feel like it like resonates with like the melody. It just like is kind of like it's like limply like thrown at you, and it's like, okay, well, I got to persist through this.
Well, I think the vocals. I get where you're coming from, but I do think the vocals. I do think that the vocals do complement the melody of the songs in just how kind of like shoddy and almost like cutthroat a lot of the riffs are and stuff. And I think the vocals. I wouldn't say disinterested as much as I would dejected. Is kind of the main sort of thing that I get. I didn't think we were going to be talking about Atrocity Exhibition so early on, but I will kind of. It's the what?
It's the first song.
First song.
Now I know,
Get
but
through
it's
the
like
overview first, though.
as Tony said, it's the difficulty spike, which is why I didn't think we'd be talking about it at the start. I've got to hand it to Joy Division. I mean, they really do know how to turn people away from the album right out of the gate.
All filtered.
It is for first-time listeners. Starting an album with Atrocity Exhibition is kind of a little bit sadistic, and I think in comparison to a lot of the other songs on the album, Atrocity Exhibition makes them look quite tuneful, which is something that it like Tony mentioned that line. This is the way, step inside, and I like that kind of like. I mean, whether it's pleasant or unpleasant, obviously that's like a different conversation. But I like the way it kind of invites you into whatever freak show of an album you're about to step into, and I think again because like the instrumental side of that song is so abrasive, it matches that pretty well. I mean, like, well, when I think of the guitar part in that song, I think about how it's like practically biting at you from the very start. And I also like, this is kind of just like a minor side note, it's a song that inspired a rapper that I'm a massive fan of, Danny Brown, who I saw live last year. He's excellent. To make one of the best 2010s rap albums, Atrocity Exhibition, as well. And I quite like that Joy Division were able to inspire artists across multiple different genres rather than just, you know, their style of rock music. I think is pretty cool as well. But yeah, it's definitely quite a heavy way to start the album. I'll give it that.
I like the drums.
Can I give you my? The drums are quite cool. They are quite cool. Can I give you my Ian Curtis bit that I've been developing? So there's two. So the first one, I'll quickly say, I feel like, you know how like the gimmick of like the X Factor for about like 7 or 8 years with All Britain's Got Talent is that someone would come up on stage and you'd be expecting one thing and then they'd give you another and it'd be like, wow, it's amazing. So like Susan Boyle, like you don't expect that voice to come out of her. I feel like Ian Curtis is a little bit of like a gimmick in the sense that you look at him and he's like this like skinny kid basically, you know, like 22 or whatever, and then he sounds like a 50-year-old man that's like incredibly depressed. Like I feel like that's a lot of the appeal, is like when you actually watch him live, you're like, okay, I see why people liked to watch this guy, because it's kind of it's fun to watch him. Obviously, you know, he's kind of like going crazy on stage, you know, with his kind of epilepsy and just the way he kind of lets the music kind of take over as well. But the thing I wanted to say about him, and kind of relates to this song, is I feel like he's a bit of a system musician in the way you have like a system player in sport. So like when Chelsea would have Eden Hazard, who just wouldn't do any running, and so they'd have to get players to like run for him because they knew what he kind of contributed was special. Or like Ronaldo at Man United, where he wouldn't press, but he still scored loads of goals. I feel like he gives you one thing. You know, he's going to be very dour, he's going to write very kind of heavy lyrics, it's going to be very monotone. And if you can surround that with a lot of energy and kind of upbeat kind of riffs and interesting things, that the music really works. And when it's just at his rhythm and at his pace, and it is as monotone as he is, it's really grating. So I found I think it's a theme in my feelings of this album, but songs like this one, where it's 6 minutes and it's not varied enough, it's just at one kind of, it's hitting one beat over and over, really hard to get through. Whereas there are songs in this album that are a bit more upbeat, and it's more the kind of Joy Division that I like. So yeah, that's my feeling on this song, and probably the album in general is it's a bit too Ian Curtis dour for my liking. And maybe there's something to do with the mixing. I hadn't really considered that, but often I found I'd also like it when the vocals were kind of being lost a little bit as well, which isn't the biggest compliment to give an album.
That's an interesting point. I hadn't thought about the way that he kind of complements the other members of the band in the way that you'd kind of talked about, and I definitely see where you're coming from. I kind of like, I do sometimes wonder how personally I'm so fascinated, and I almost idolize, you know, front people and singers from bands that are known for being, I guess, you know, tormented, tortured, whatever you want to call it, because the music that then seems to sort of grow around it kind of tends to fit what I'm after, especially when it comes to rock music. And I think Closer overall as a project is just sort of made even more poignant from the fact that Ian died before it was released, and I think so many of the songs, I get that the vocals sometimes get lost in the mix, and they're not, you know, he doesn't always sing with like the most clarity in the world, but I mean, I've read a lot of the lyrics for a lot of these songs, and I think they reflect that inner pain really, really well. Like, I love Isolation, for example, the second song on the album, which is when I think it I was going to say when I think it really starts. I actually don't think the album really starts until Passover, but I'll get to that a little bit later on. I just think across the whole album, if you look at what he's singing about and the way that he reflects his that inner torment, it comes through with like. I mean, he almost sounds like a poet at times. I mean, I think 24 Hours, which is a song I will talk about at some point because I absolutely love that song, is a standout for just how well he comes across. The kind of like the sort of language that he uses is just so like hopeless, and then the way the music kind of reinforces all of that and those ideas, I think is done so well too.
The two songs you've mentioned, I feel like there is a bit more energy to them. So 24 Hours is also my favourite song on this album.
Was my favourite
and then
as well, 24 Hours.
Isolation, similarly, it's kind of his vocals kind of contrasting with the kind of upbeat music. So, it's incredibly depressive, heavy lyrics with kind of, upbeat music. I also found, even in those tracks, which I really liked, it's quite hard to understand sometimes what he's saying when it's not a line being repeated over and over. Potentially, again, that's the mix coming through. But similar to Andrew, I had to make the effort to read the lyrics and kind of take in some of that, I guess, kind of poetry you're talking about. And maybe that's more of a me problem. But I guess if the central appeal is kind of that, I feel like you're not getting that on a first and kind of even a second listen. So it really is, as Tony says, it is an album on hard mode. You really do need to fucking get the wiki up and read the item descriptions of the songs.
I do think there's potentially actually two good albums here. One of them is a very good instrumental of fairly bleak but interesting, like indie rock, and the other is a spoken word poetry album that on its own would probably be, pretty tolerable if you got him a better microphone and put him in a room with better soundproofing. But I do think, I do like, particularly I like the lyrics for Atrocity Exhibition. That was my favourite song lyrically, was that.
But instrumentally, you weren't too keen on it either, I guess. As Harry said, 6 minutes, a little bit repetitive, incredibly unmelodic as well.
I can tolerate a 6-minute repetitive song. Like, I'm a massive fan of LCD Sound System. I can listen to 8-minute long songs where it's just a simple beat slowly building or doing something or not really doing much. Like,
It wouldn't be a Mediate episode now without Andrew mentioning LCD Sound System.
Yeah, I am
thinking about getting Oculus as well.
I am contractually obligated to mention LCD Sound System at least once per podcast.
Yeah, Harry, what did you think of the final track on the album? Like, I'm eager to get your thoughts.
Piss me off, Ethan, because The Eternal is the perfect final song, and then they play Decades. I'm like, for God's sake, just swap them round, and I would have been able to make my comment.
So right,
oh, you guys don't like Decades?
No, but they should have swapped them. Because The Eternal is the stereotypical Harry, you end the album on a slow song, and then I'd be like, I can forgive that, but I can't forgive it because it ends on Decades.
Oh, Decades is longer.
Yeah, but it's...
Decades isn't the most like energetic, off the wall, crazy adrenaline track on the planet, though.
There is like a noise or like an effect in that song that really just grates. It's one of those like Kate Bush things where there's something in the song that just makes it a bad song. But like where Kate Bush would be good is because she'd have like 25 ideas in the song, whereas I feel like when something's made up of about 3 or 4 parts and one of them is as bad as it is, I just don't like the song.
I disagree that it's a bad song, but I do agree that around the I made a note of it here. Yeah, so around the sort of 4:35 mark, there is a sound that plays at another point in the album, although I don't know why it sounds so shit at this point in the album. It's like an alarm. I'm not sure what instrument produces it. I'd imagine it's probably one of the synth kits they have working on the album or something like that. But I have written down it sounds too grating. So like I completely agree with you, Harry. It is. Any time I listen to Decades, and I've listened to this album quite a lot from start to finish, whenever I get to Decades, and that moment comes on, there's always this period of adjustment for me where I just need to kind of like, adjust to just how kind of horrible and annoying that sound is. And I do after like sort of 5 or 6 seconds, but like when it first hits you, it is just like, oh my God, why couldn't they have mixed that better? Why couldn't they have like toned it down a little bit? It's just, it's not very good, that part.
It really is a post-suicide album. You know, it's trying to give the listener the desire to take their own life. No, it's
My controversial
it's not even that bad.
take is liking Decades.
Yeah,
I like Decades. I love Decades. I just don't like the part at the 4:35 mark. I want to get that across. I think it's a great
I've
song.
just listened to the 4:35 mark, and I'm like, no, that's one of my favourite bits of the song.
I'm pretty sure I liked that bit. It's because, I mean, me and John, I know John feels similarly to me because we discussed this earlier, but like, we are both massive fans of the soundtrack of the game Return of the Obra Dinn. It is the best video game soundtrack there has ever been, in my opinion. But anyway, parts of Decades sound a bit like some of the music from Return of the Obra Dinn, and that will make me like anything if it makes me think of Return of the Obra Dinn, even if it's not as good, which Decades is not.
Decades did kind of have like I'd say video game inspired. I don't know if video games were invented at this point in chronology, but like kind of like a chiptune kind of, you know, sound to it. I don't know if that's true or if I'm just hearing things.
Andrew, I think I know what you're talking about. The instrument, I looked this up. It's called like a melodica or a melodeon or something. It's like a keyboardy type instrument, and I think it produces the sound in those sections that reminds you of that game.
There's a bit of it in the start of the song as well. It's more than just that one burst of synths. But yeah, it has a feel that I like a bit more. I'd say Decades is probably my second favourite song on the album.
Yeah, to me, it's one of the songs that sounds the most unique in the album.
Yes. Yes.
My rough experience of this album is putting it on, hearing "This Is the Way," "Step Inside," and then zoning out, and then Decade starts.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, the two songs that have left the most impression to
Yeah.
me is the first one, because that's the one I click on, and then Decades, because that's the one where, like, I feel it coming back. And it amused me when I realised, oh, that's literally the first and last songs on the
Yeah,
album.
like I had a similar thing happen, Jono, where I would like listen to like the first two songs, and they would put me in like such like a bad mood. So I would like kind of be listening, but still kind of not really like, yeah, like my attention had been like used up, like a soul in Dark Souls, just like destroyed for like 20 souls. And by the time I was like, oh yeah, this song is actually pretty good, like whatever song I'm listening to now, Spotify just like auto-played to like a random other song way after the album. I'm like, oh, I can't wait to talk about this one. Oh, not by Joy Division. Never mind.
I'm sorry, Ethan. This
Back to the beginning.
this feels like a very cruel podcast right now. It's like a
It's all good. It's all
4-on-1
good.
gang fight.
I mean, I've put up with this before. Like, I'm pretty sure we've reviewed stuff that I've really enjoyed, and you guys have had, very negative things to say about it. It's all good.
Yeah, I think if we're being diplomatic, I mean it definitely is a challenging listen. But I guess I'm curious, Ethan, as to why it resonates so much with you. What is it that kind of makes this an album that you'd own a T-shirt of, for instance?
So, you know what's really funny? I didn't actually buy the T-shirt that I sent the screenshot of. It was actually given to me, so that's the only reason I own it. But, I do have an Unknown Pleasures T-shirt, and I do love that album as well. I mean, there's so many reasons. I mean, I've talked about what I get from Ian. I think he's a very poignant and poetic songwriter. I think he's a very relatable person, not in the sense that I can personally... I have the personal knowledge that I've experienced the stuff that he's going through, but just that I think I just have... Like, I have an enormous amount of empathy for him, and I have an enormous amount of empathy for a lot of artists that have created music that I like that, we didn't get very much of, and normally there's, like, a sad ending, involved. So there's that part, but I just think... I mean, like, you guys know what music I like. I like the Pixies, I like Sonic Youth, I like My Bloody Valentine. Like, alternative rock is just probably my favourite genre, and I think ultimately what it comes down to is the sound. I just think a lot of the songs on Closer are kind of beautiful in their own very twisted way, and the dissonance is something that I really enjoy listening to. Actually, you know what? There's a moment that demonstrates this quite well that's just come to me. A means to an end. There's a moment towards the start when Ian begins singing, and And I love it so much. It's really simple. It's just like a very kind of short piece of guitar feedback that I assume comes from the fact that they're playing the song live in the studio, and they don't have like the best equipment in the world. And it's definitely unpleasant, even though it's brief. And they could have easily re-recorded it, but they chose not to. And whether they noticed it or not, it doesn't matter, because either they weren't bothered by it, or they're accustomed to feedback and they're accustomed to those kind of mistakes and errors, and they just didn't notice. And that discrepancy for me represents the incredibly rough production work on this album. It's not something that's really designed to be pristine or very ironed out. It's supposed to be raw and imperfect, and I think that leaning into your own imperfections as an artist, whatever band you're in or whatever you're doing, can make something appear a little bit more vulnerable, and with it being so noisy as well, like all those things kind of come together and make an album that I do really, really enjoy. I get that it's a strange way of viewing music and art, but it's the way that I think of this album anyway.
Ethan, it's good that you bring up A Means to an End, and I do have something I want to say about it. But before I get to that point, I do want to point out, I want to reiterate, the first 4 songs, they're so bad, in my opinion.
The first 4 songs. Do you know?
Wait a second. Let me say my piece. They're almost unlistenable, in my opinion. I was so, by the time I got to Passover and Colony, I was just fuck. I wanted this guy to shut up. I hated it. And that had tainted my mind. I couldn't mentally process any more music after listening to those first 4 songs. But on my later playthroughs of this album, in my character selection, I chose the mystery key, and I skipped straight to A Means to an End. And I was like, oh my god, what if this is actually when I got to A Means to an End after not having to listen to the other 4 songs, I was like, it's kind of working. I saw this I listened to the kind of style of the vocals, and instead of it being this really grating, slapped on sort of thing, it felt much more enmeshed with the sort of the instrumentation, and I kind of the mood that the album is going for, this kind of uneasy, disquiet sound. I was like, oh my god, I'm there. I'm in this moment. I think there's a genuine turning point for this album halfway through where it actually becomes good.
But it takes 5 songs to get there.
It takes 5 songs. It takes 5 songs to...
I'm not surprised you dislike Colony, but Colony is my favourite song on the album. I fucking love it so much, man.
I can't believe it.
I fucking love it so much. I will talk about Colony in a minute. There was something I wanted to just talk about a little bit as well. Harry was asking me, why does this album resonate with me so much? Another thing is just and this kind of just ties into the general sound of the album. It's the guitar work. I remember the first time I listened to Closer, I was at my grandparents', I think, and I was like, I've known about this band for years. I want to give this band a go. I don't want to listen to the album that everybody talks about. I want to try and be a bit different and listen to the second album first, which is actually what I did. I didn't listen to Unknown Pleasures first. I listened to Closer first, and I was amazed at how consistent the track listing was, and I don't necessarily mean in quality. I mean, I think the quality is fantastic across the whole album. I just mean how consistent the sound is. If you ignore Atrocity Exhibition and Isolation, which for me are kind of songs that don't really fit the overall trend of the album, a little bit like what Tony was talking about a second ago, from Passover onwards, I think that everything is kind of in a similar vein with everything else, and I think the guitar work is a big part of that. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Curtis as a vocalist. I think he's really great, and I think Peter Hook's a fantastic bassist as well. But it's really Bernard Sumner's guitar parts that won me over, and it's in the simplicity of them, I think. I remember when we did the Smiths, and we were all going on about how intricate Johnny Marr is as a guitarist, and I think Sumner's the complete opposite, but he's just as effective. A lot of the riffs are really simple and unelaborate. and the guitar tone especially is just so like warped. I don't know why, but I just love the sound of it. Like I find it so hypnotic to listen to. And it doesn't matter if it's a riff or like a bunch of chords being played. Just having that same sound across the album can really help drive like a sense of pacing. But obviously, if the sound doesn't appeal to you, I understand that can be, you know, just as horrible to listen to. Guys, I have a lot more to say about this album. So please, honestly, just feel free to jump in, talk about whatever you want. So I'm not, like I said, I don't want to just be monologuing for 10 minutes at a time.
Well, I've done my face turn. I'll say some more nice things.
I've got some questions
I
for
think...
Tony as well.
Yes, go ahead.
So when you were in that room listening to the Sex Pistols for the first time, what did you think?
You know, I think that might be one of those memories that didn't quite make it across to my current reiteration. I'm thinking Sex Pistols. All I can think of is the Deagle scene from Snatch. Is that a Sex Pistol? Perhaps.
What?
The Deagle scene where he's like,
what, the gun?
Yeah. He's like, I've got fucking 50 cal written on the side of mine. You've got a fake gun. That's all that's coming to me. I hope that answers your question, Harry.
Thank you. Alright, sorry for interrupting you, because you actually got Sex as well.
Now all I can think about is Snatch. No, I'm kidding. I would agree that 24 Hours is probably the best song, to whoever else said that. I think that 24 Hours and Eternal are like the album like has like metamorphized. It's like realized that like, oh my god, making the album is like a deadline. Like I've got 3 songs left, and now it has to be good. So you put the shift in, and I think Eternal like really captures this like somber mood, and almost like I find there's this quite like church-like quality to the sound that really resonated with me, and like the sort of the spoken word style that I so viscerally hated in the first half. I felt that sort of like the sort of like voice cracking that came through in the Eternal was a bit more like, oh, it helps sort of resonate with that mood rather than being like putting me in just like a fugue state of like, shut up.
Yeah, the Eternal is definitely like probably the moodiest song on the album. I mean, anytime I listen to it, it feels like I'm listening to, well, it feels like I'm watching like a procession of people wandering through this like desolate town or something, you know, after a funeral. It just has this like kind of slow march to it. I don't know, like Harry, you'll know. I think you'll know Remain in Light the best out of all of us, apart from me, I guess, because I've listened to the album like so many times. But do you remember the final song on that album, The Overload?
Yeah, I do.
Do you think it sounds a lot like The Eternal at all?
Yeah.
Do you think they sound quite similar?
I definitely see it. I mean, the song that kind of made me think of David Byrne the most actually might have been Colony, in terms of the sort of vocal delivery style. Also, kind of heart and soul. There's something about Curtis's voice in that kind of reads like David Byrne. I actually quite liked Heart and Soul. I think in Tony's kind of once you've got over the hump kind of point, which I kind of agree with. I think going from Means to the End, Heart and Soul, 24 Hours, The Eternal, that kind of run is the strongest run for me. I didn't even hate the final song as well. I feel like that became a bit of a meme just because of that one sound effect. But yeah, I think I know what you mean with the comparison with The Overload. But the thing that makes that song great, Ethan, is that it is the last song on the album.
Fair enough.
I'm surprised so many I'm surprised so many of you are saying that the Eternal stood out for you, because my experience with it was as I said, I listened to this album like 5 times. I think the first once or twice was just to listen to it, and then the third time I started writing notes. And I wrote notes for every song on that occasion except for The Eternal, which I just wrote down the name of the song and then zoned out. And I did that the second time I went round to making notes on it. I only wrote up my notes on The Eternal today, forcing myself to pay attention and listen to it so I would have notes for every song.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, The Eternal is kind of like a very languid song. And if you're not enjoying the album at that point or really connecting to it, then having something like that right at the end can like kind of bore you a little bit.
I should have been. Like, the song right before it is 24 Hours, which, like, you know, perked me up and was my favourite song on the album. So, like, I don't know. I don't know what it is about The Eternal, but it just made my brain switch off. And then I clocked back in for decades and was like, sounds a bit like the Obra Dinn. Also, The Eternal is actually, checking my notes again, The Eternal is the song I have down as having a, I don't know, it's not really a synth, but it's some sort of synthetic, artificial sounding noise that I've described as sounding like wind going through plastic leaves, or something like the buzzing of like insect wings or something that happens at some point in that song. I found.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I don't know, it wasn't like unpleasant, but it also didn't add anything terribly much for me to that. But
I want to say my piece on 24 Hours now, actually, because we've talked about it a few times. It's definitely a highlight for me on the album. I think I don't think Ian has ever sounded as hopeless or as like given up as he does on this song. I've talked about how I think he can be very poetic at times, and I think on this track he is almost at his best for that. Like there are so many lines that I've got written down here that just like leap out to me and just kind of like tear through me every time I listen to him perform them. Like I love the just for one moment I thought I'd found my way, destiny unfolded, I watched it slip away. And then there's another one from the final verse that I really love too. Now that I've realised how it's all gone wrong, gotta find some therapy, this treatment takes too long. Deep in the heart of where sympathy held sway, gotta find my destiny before it gets too late. And I'm just like, oh my god. Like, whenever I hear him perform these lines, it really just like, as I said, it just sort of cuts through me. Like I really, really feel the like the hell that must be going on inside that man's body. It really, really comes through in that song. And again, like with all the other songs on this album, I think instrumentally it emphasizes a lot of those messages too, because you always get this feeling listening to 24 Hours like you're going towards something that's just unavoidable. It has such a forward sense of momentum at times. It's that the song is split between these two sort of like back and forth parts where you've got a more kind of bass-oriented section that's quite good, and then in between those you've got these incredibly loud, parts that just hit you like a fucking freight train. And those are the parts where I think his lyrics come through the most. It's a perfect song for me. 24 Hours. It is really, really fucking good, I think.
Yeah, I agree that it's really good, and I don't know how much you will agree with this, Ethan, because I imagine you like the rest of the album more. But there might be something to the idea of like, it sounds so good because it's kind of like the first like, oh, now I feel like I notice a lot more energy to its delivery of the vocals, and I was like, if this had been any other album where it was like more consistently like the vocalist is like alive and like has that energy to their performance, you wouldn't notice it as much. But because it's like it comes in after so much of like a grind, you're like, oh yes, now finally. Adds to the enjoyment of that song.
Yeah, no, I completely get where you're coming from. Out of interest, Tony, did you listen to the second album that I posted on WhatsApp?
I think once or twice it did autoplay onto the other one. I was like, oh, this sounds good. I'm like, oh wait, sorry, don't want to get my wires crossed. Don't want to accidentally listen to the wrong album again. I've made that mistake before. So I did probably listen to like one or two of the other songs from the album, and I did like them, but then I was like, I've got to focus my mental energy, one Joy Division album at a time, or I'll lose my way.
Yeah, because Harry, I know you also listened to Unknown Pleasures, and you listened to it first, right? And I think I mean, from that thumbnail photo that you sent me, which did make me laugh, I'll admit. Like it sounds like Unknown Pleasures kind of appealed to you a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, Ian Curtis left the football before the football left him. No, yeah, I did. In terms of like Joy Division, so I listened to, as you've said, Unknown Pleasures. I really liked Disorder and She's Lost Control. Obviously, Love Will Tear Us Apart's great. I quite like Transmission, and then I also quite like 24 Hours. And I think of all of the songs of theirs I've listened to, those are the ones that have made it onto my liked songs playlist. And I don't think it's a band I'll really be exploring beyond those songs now. I don't know what all those have in common with the others. Maybe it is just they are a bit more up tempo and appeal to me a bit more. Maybe they're a bit shorter as well. Although She's Lost Control is quite a repetitive song. But I think it may just be, as I said, it's got more energy and also the length. I think that's the thing that contrasts with some of the songs on this album.
I'm so glad that you mentioned She's Lost Control, because now I have an opportunity to talk about the song without making it sound like I'm diverting the podcast to talk about a song that's on a different album. Johnny, you'll hopefully remember She's Lost Control, GCSE Maths, right? Is it all coming back to you? I'm pretty sure that was a song that we talked about back in the day. And it's so funny, like, I mean, how depressing must have those lessons been that meant we had more fun talking about She's Lost Control and Paranoid Android and like songs like that. Yeah.
It was always good fun, those chats. It was a fun random table we were at.
Yeah, it was a great table.
Be accidentally giving you some of your taste in music.
Yeah, I remember it was Paranoid Android. Black Hole Sun was like another one that you definitely recommended me the music video for. I'm sure there were quite a few others as well. But She's Lost Control was the first song that I ever heard by Joy Division. And what makes this song so good is that when I first heard it, it was unlike anything I'd ever heard. And ever since, I still don't think I've heard anything that like even that sounds even like remotely like it. It just has this. It has this really deeply sinister and creepy atmosphere, especially in the first verse before the guitar gets involved. I just think it creates something right out of the gate that's just so unbelievably gripping. And I think a big part of that is the fact that the bass part in the song is being played really high up the fretboard by Peter, and then when the guitar does come in, it's playing these really aggressive power chords that are like further down the fretboard. And I just think that whole dynamic between those two instruments in the song just gives the song this really like strange kind of top heavy feeling that's almost a little bit disorienting. And you know, the drums are a big part of the song as well, and making it work. And obviously the lyrics are excellent as well. The way that Ian draws parallels between these horrifying episodes that the woman in the song is having, between the you know, his own experiences dealing with epilepsy, I think is just really eye-opening. Yeah, it's just one of those feelingly very few songs that anytime I listen to it, I'm just in a trance from the first few seconds. I'm really glad it exists. It's one of the highlights on that album for sure.
Yeah, such a powerful song. Every bit of the sound is just conveying the emotion and story of the song.
Yeah, that is the song I went back to listen to after finishing Closer to remind myself that I do actually like Joy Division. Or at least I think I like Joy Division, you know. I don't know if I don't like most of one half of their entire output of albums.
Yeah, maybe it's like Star Wars, where like you can hate like 80% of it, but you're still a Star Wars fan.
Maybe. I don't know, I think I will still say that I am a Joy Division fan, and then if I need to have a longer conversation with the person I've said that to, I will clarify my position on Closer.
Good. I don't think I'd be able to live with feeling like I made somebody who liked Joy Division hate. That is not what I intended to do by picking this
hate
out.
would be a very strong word. Like, it's more a question of like, can I actively call myself a fan if, you know, one of their albums only has one song on it I like, which is not to say I thought the other songs on this were bad. Like, I'm not, this isn't a Kate Bush situation where I thought this album was actively bad. I actually think this is 2 7 out of 10 albums that have been mixed into one much worse album.
I was thinking as well, when Harry asked me about, just what are things that I like about this album and this band. Again, another part of it, I just think, is the whole like supply and demand effect, which is that I'm such a big fan of this band, and because I'm only ever limited to a really small selection of songs that I can listen to by them, means that I have an even deeper appreciation for what's there, to the point where songs like, some of the songs that Harry mentioned a second ago, like he mentioned Transmission, that is so far and away one of their best songs, probably one of their like 5 best songs. It's so fucking good, and they have a lot of other songs that when I listen to them, it's almost like it's stardust to me. It's like we have these 2 albums, and then with Nirvana we have these 3 albums. With Jimi Hendrix we have 3 albums. With Jeff Buckley we only have 1 album, and it's just like I think just the knowledge that we have such a small supply of music by some of these artists, and in this episode's particular case, Joy Division, just makes their music feel that much more precious while I'm listening to it as well. I think that's something else that kind of comes through when I'm listening to their music too, that I wanted to just mention as well.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes there's the case of a lot of musicians that like it feels like a common trope of like they sort of outlive their prime and their relevancy, and they like continue, they'll perform and people be like, oh, just put the old stuff on, and their newer stuff is just like not feeling it, sorry. And I think this is like kind of like the inverse case of like, struck down before they, not saying they would, but they potentially had the chance to fall off. It's kind of like an interesting inversion of that.
Yeah, we missed out on the Joy Division 8-bit chiptune Game Boy Advance game soundtrack. Would have been their best work.
Damn shame.
The most depressing Game Boy Advance game anyone
you
will
can't,
ever play.
You know why? You know why it would be the best? Because you can't put vocals on a Game Boy. Sorry. Rest in peace.
Do you like New Order, Andrew?
I think I have listened to like 1 or maybe 2 of their songs, and I don't think I like them very much.
Yeah, I've
the whole like
getting into it a couple
this band would be better without the vocalist. that is the band without the vocalist.
But I think the trouble is New Order went on, were like, let's try to make stuff that sounds different, and then they made stuff that sounds different.
Yeah, they went from being a really gothy kind of punky band to making like electronic synth pop music. It was a pretty big departure in sound. It doesn't surprise me that they became more popular as New Order as well. Like Blue Monday is, I think, the best selling single on vinyl in this country in history, which is a pretty insane achievement as well.
Not to keep bringing everything back to football, but would this album be better if John Barnes was rapping throughout all the songs instead of Ian Curtis, like he did in World of Motion by New Order?
Definitely not.
Maybe.
Simple answer from me.
With same lyrics, or would he be, freestyling his own stuff over the top?
I'd love to hear a version where it's just word for word his rap about defend and attack. There's only one way to beat them: get around the back. with the really haunting, layered kind of sense of doom that the rest of the album creates.
I'm almost ready to go on to wrapping this up, because I realise that we've been recording for a long time. But as I said, Colony is my favourite song on the album, so I do just want to talk about it a little bit quickly. Colony was just the song that I kept coming back to when I first listened to this album, even though I know it's a pretty niche one. It just has this really like gear grinding quality about it. I think Peter's bass part is kind of acts almost like a second guitar part in this song, in just how like noticeable and how fuzzy it is. And I just love the tone of the song. I think the grooves are like a really easy to lock into and kind of nod my head to as well. I think the guitar riffs are really punchy too. And I think the guitar also really helps transition between different sections quite well. And again, I like the lyrics to it quite a lot as well. Like, I love that passage towards the end that happens in the breakdown section, where Ian is kind of like increasing in like agitation with each repetition of this line. The God in his wisdom took you by the hand, God in his wisdom made you understand. Like, having that line get kind of repeated over this riff that's getting louder and louder and more kind of like manic as well, I just think is a really strong point, not only on this song, but I think on the whole album. And again, like, his lyrics are really good. You really get that feeling of disconnectedness coming through, of being somewhere that's like totally alien and foreign to you. And I think he's just got so much conviction behind those ideas too, as he does on all of his songs from my point of view anyway. I just think it's a fantastic song from start to finish, and I really, really wanted to give it a shout out.
I do agree with you about the conviction, Ethan. I feel like, and I also quite like the instrumentation of the first 4 songs, and Colony is part of that. But like, the God in his wisdom made you understand, like the repeated nature of it. It just like, he like got in my brain in a way that was like it's like a virus. Like, I was just like, get out.
But that's almost what it's trying to do, man. It's trying to infect
I
you.
know. I think
infectious.
I know, and I think it's just like a thing with me of like, the more like, if something is trying to genuinely adapt like at this very sort of negative feelings into song or any kind of art form, like, it's making me think of like Synecdoche, New York. Like, it's about death, and it's like putting you in that headspace of death. I'm like, look, I don't want to be dead, you know. And that's like, the more genuinely it can capture it, obviously, is a very like, it knows what it's going for, but then, and it's doing it well in that sense. But also, the more I'm like, I'm gonna reject it and be like, no, I want to be alive.
I don't know, I think I would rather be dead than watch Synecdoche, New York again. But
Wow.
Gotta defend this
harsh
film.
words.
but that's a topic for
I feel like
another day.
it's the way you can like package it. So like, I feel like had some slightly more kind of upbeat, you know, more kind of accessible songs, you know, you cut down the length of some of the really brutal stuff here. It's slightly less challenging, it's slightly easier on the ears. You can kind of smuggle that message in. I guess like defending Synecdoche, New York, like it is quite a funny film. So I feel like it's kind of, it's getting that message into something that is a little bit more easy to digest, at least for me. Whereas for me, I guess I don't like to be challenged with music as much as I do with films. Maybe I'm more willing to kind of engage with a really kind of challenging watch with a film, where I'm not with music. Especially, you know, the first time I listened to this, I was, you know, out and about, you know, kind of walking around, kind of driving, and it's just the second listen, you know, I did the Ethan like sitting in a dark room like a psychopath, like locked in, and I feel like you kind of have to do that with something like this. Like, this isn't music you could like throw on, like, you know, a playlist, especially not like the opening track, for instance. So maybe again, maybe I'm giving it too much credit. I'm just keep saying it's a me problem.
Could you imagine getting in the car with someone driving somewhere, and they're like, you know, they lend you the aux and you plug your phone in, and they just put on Atrocity Exhibition, like that's how you start the car journey.
I jump out of the car.
Yeah, sorry, Harry, I cut you off there. What were you saying?
I know. I talked myself into a corner, as I do in every music podcast, and then I'm desperately looking for an off ramp or a point that I can stop talking.
I think it's okay, Harry. I think what I'm understanding of your point is you think this album needs an easy mode.
Definitely.
I love how what we've worked out is this album is the Dark Souls of of music.
Yeah, I think that kind of brings us towards the end.
Yeah, I feel kind of bad for Ethan, but also this has been quite funny. So sorry about that, Ethan.
No, it's okay. I feel like I've defended this album very admirably. I'm quite proud of myself because it's not like everything that you have all said has been completely negative. I just understand that when I picked this album, I absolutely knew that it wasn't going to get a 50 out of 50. You know, like I knew that. Well, Tony, I had a feeling you wouldn't really enjoy it. Harry, I kind of had a feeling you wouldn't really enjoy it. And with Johnny and Andrew, I sort of hoped they might, but I was also a little bit unsure. And I caught up with Johnny like a couple of months ago when we were all in Leeds, and he told me he wasn't like the biggest fan. So I knew what I was getting into, and I still went ahead with it anyway. And I'm glad I did because I love this album, and I really wanted to talk about it.
What would you give it as a score?
I think it's pretty self-evident. I mean, it's a 10 out of 10 album for me. I fucking love it. I love the riffs. I love the lyrics. I love the I just love almost everything about this album. And you know what else I love about Joy Division? I don't know what it is about this band, but ever since I've been listening to them, and I listen to them quite a lot, there is still something so like mysterious and intriguing about this band and about just the sound that comes out of some of these songs, like not even just on Closer but on Unknown Pleasures as well. Like as stripped back and bare bones as these two albums are, I have a really easy time like imagining places and scenarios, situations, listening to them. And I think that's just like another sort of tick in the box for how great these guys are at creating a really, really like pungent atmosphere as well. Yeah, I think about this band quite a lot, and I have done for a very long time. So yeah, it's a 10 out of 10 album for me. And you're all wrong.
I respect it. It.
For me, like I don't know. I do think it is a good album. I think a lot of the sounds they create are quite interesting. I think I do quite like even a Trusty Exhibition. Like there was no point where I even thought of like, oh, maybe I'll skip that to get into the rest of the album whenever I was putting it on. But I think for me one of the issues is nothing particularly stood out in the album really. I think partially that might be why I never felt the need to skip onto something else, because I didn't know what to skip onto really. And for me, the only song that particularly stood out was Decades, just because it is so different from the rest in just the sort of the kind of instruments it's going for, or like the tone, but not exactly. I don't know. So weirdly, I would say Decades probably ended up being my favourite song of the album, which is amusing with also being the longest song on the album. But yeah, no, I think it is good. It's just missing some of the standout songs that you get off of Unknown Pleasures, and it's been perfectly fine to listen to, but I will enjoy that I will no longer have this over me as like you need to listen to this. You need to listen to this again. Listen to it at work.
You're no longer my hostage, Johnny.
Yeah. Because I've definitely now listened to this album. Well, definitely through more times than I ever have Unknown Pleasures. And I think I need to write that. But anyway, I think I can only really give this a 5 out of 10.
Yeah, I shall follow up John's 5 out of 10 by saying that, well, I said this was, and I do believe this album it's a 7 out of 10 spoken word poetry album, and a 7 out of 10 like intriguing instrumental, gloomy gothic rock album, but sadly if you put those two things together you do somehow end up making a 5, so I will also be giving it 5 out of 10.
the worst of both worlds.
Yeah, I mean, I'll echo that. I think it's also a 5. Maybe that's giving it a bit of the benefit of the doubt. There's definitely a sense of we're listening to this to do a podcast on it rather than any of us actually wanting to listen to it. And maybe had we come to this, of our own free will, may have liked it more rather than, okay, you've got to listen to this at least kind of twice, 3 times to for a podcast and take notes. And when you're not in the mood and those first, that first track hits you, it can be hard to recover from that. So yeah, I may have enjoyed it a little bit less than a 5, but I think there is some technical quality and there were a couple of songs I liked a lot. So yeah, I think a 5 is pretty fair.
I think I've kind of got an inverse opinion of like, because we're doing this for review, I was like, I'm gonna give Ethan the benefit of the doubt. He hasn't just put this as he usually does, just chooses things just specifically to spite me because he knows I'll hate them. So I assume there's something here, and that's why I like went back in with like doubled energy to like find what was good about it. Whereas if I had been like just listening to this, oh man, I would have given this like negative 1,000. I would have gotten to like the second time around listening to Atrocity Exhibition and like throw my phone into the ocean. But instead, I think like as Ethan said, like there is definitely this like kind of unique sort of atmosphere that comes across in its sound that is very interesting. But at the same time, I do kind of have to like sort of respect my own brain's sort of like white blood cell like immune response that's like viscerally like against a lot of the album as well, which is why I will give it a 5 out of 10.
Oh, yes, I've brought everyone round to my scoring of either 10, 5 or 1.
I mean, I'm
That's a clean sweep.
I'm here thinking that hopefully a lot of the positive statements I've made about this album has caused you guys to up it from like a 3 or a 4.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I mean, for me, with my everything's either a 10, 5 or 1, it has been rounded down to reach that 5.
Yeah. And Tony, I'm sorry to say that I didn't pick this album because I thought you guys would enjoy it. I picked it purely because I wanted to talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, at the end of the day, that's what we're here for, and that's what the fans are here for as well.
Can't wait for the Ethan edit.
Joyous listeners.
We'll get cut out. All of our contributions to this podcast are just going to be cut out. It'll be like a 30-minute episode.
The Ethan cut. That's what the fans are really clamouring for.
It's all just us saying 10, but from different episodes.
Oh god.
It's really poorly edited. Like Hollow Knight is a 10.
Johnny, did you ever listen to that episode that I did with Harry where I actually cut in, like I edited in your comments from a different episode in order to make it sound like you were agreeing with almost everything that
a little bit of that, but yeah, I've not listened myself.
Anyway, this concludes our 80s Music Mates series. We may be back, we may not, who knows at this point, This could be the last episode that we ever do of Mediate. I guess we'll just have to see.
Are we closer to more, or are we a closer about to close?
This would be such a depressing last episode.
Until the next time, if there is one.
Stop.